Hello and welcome to the Doofcast, the official variety podcast of doofmedia.com. My name is Scott Daly, and according to the laws of the Doofcast, we bring you another patron-produced episode. Matt, tell us what movie we are doing this week.
Don't quote the doof magic to me, witch. I was there when it was written.
Is there any warrior who will bear this burden?
Wow, there's a whole podcast in this wardrobe. British accent. Sorry, I couldn't hold it.
This week on the show, it is indeed another one of our patron-produced episodes. For those of you that do not know, folks that pledge to us on the Supreme Leader Doof level, maybe we should change that. I don't know. Or higher on Patreon. That's patreon.com/doofmedia. Get to select a movie for us to do a show on. This time, our patron Joey L asked us to take a look at the 2005 adaptation of C.S. Lewis's fantasy novel, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And for this episode, we've brought back the resident Doof member who happened to be a child when this movie originally came out. Welcome back to the show, Alexandra. It's good to talk to you again.
Thank you. I'm a subject matter expert, as you just explained. So.
Yeah, of being young in 2005. How, just to destroy my entire world, how old were you in 2005?
Oh, God, I can't do math. I guess 6, depending on when it came out.
So Matt and I were 20.
So you don't have quite the same rosy feelings as I do.
No, okay. Unfortunately, we were sort of fresh off Lord of the Rings and expecting something along those lines. And
this was my Lord of the Rings.
It wasn't quite what we were expecting, which I don't know whose fault that is, because Narnia is not Lord of the Rings, you know?
Yeah, no. I mean, I kind of... We'll get into this. I think there's a lot of Lord of the Rings conversation we have to have here.
Do we? I have no idea what even... Okay.
I think so. Well, okay, so we're going to be talking all about this movie. Then the rest of the episode, we will be revealing the results of our poll around last week's Council of Doof episode on the movie Bedazzled. And then I wanted to finish this episode up just kind of having another entertainment, theater, movie, pop culture check-in and see how the world of entertainment's doing right now. Spoilers for that conversation. It's not going great, folks.
And I love that for us.
All right, but let's waste no further time and get right into our main segment of the week. Let's talk about the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
There is a prophecy that 2 sons of Adam and 2 daughters of Eve will appear to defeat the White Witch and put an end to this 100-year winter.
I think you've made a mistake. We're not heroes.
There's no mistake. Aslan is on the move.
Matt, what is this movie all about?
4 kids travel through a wardrobe to the land of Narnia and learn of their destiny to free it with the guidance of a mystical lion.
This movie was written by Anne Peacock and Andrew Adamson and Christopher Marcus and Stephen McFeely, and directed by Andrew Adamson, who is, for those of you that don't know, is the director who gifted the world with not 1, but 2 of the Shrek films. He directed both Shrek 1 and Shrek 2, and then went on to make this movie.
Hey, has there been a Doofcast on Shrek?
No.
Okay, there will be a Doofcast on Shrek.
Is it going to be about how it's not a very good movie, actually?
No, I have actually. We wouldn't watch the original Shrek. We watched Shrek Retold, but that's a whole nother thing. We're doing a different thing. It's fine.
All right. So where do we start with this? I think, I guess, Alex, I want to start with you. Mm-hmm. This movie hit you probably at the exact time it was kind of built for the story to hit you. So what was the experience of watching this movie? Had you read the book? Probably
not at the time. Okay. I read it after. Probably this was a motivating factor. I did not catch any of the Christian metaphor at the time, but I also wasn't raised super Christian. What I really liked, I think, those aspects at the time. I definitely wanted to go into Narnia, and I think I remember I had a toy of Peter. I think I remember because of its kind of generic color scheme, you know. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't like formative, but I think we did like own it. We watched it multiple times. I think, I definitely was very familiar with all the scenes around like, the witch and the big battle and everything.
So was Peter like your character? Like, is he the one?
Good question. Um, I think so, but I feel like the archetypes of these siblings are pretty distinct, like in specifics. So I don't think I attach too much to any of them. That said, if we're gonna talk about which children are the best, Lucy's the best.
Yeah, I mean, it's
so
almost
much.
It's almost Lucy's movie.
Yeah.
In a few ways, like she could be the protagonist of this movie, except in the later half when Peter randomly becomes the protagonist because he's the man.
It's strange. It feels like Lucy is main character, and then Edmund comes in and is what's it called? Deuteragonist? Is that the correct?
Sure.
Other protagonist. That's how I felt about him anyway, because we spent so much time with him. And then Peter suddenly takes the lead, and Susan is also there. So
Susan exists.
Yeah,
Susan is also there.
At the very end, she finally uses that bow, right? And it just feels so much like, oh, we need a moment for her, and they have her save Edmund real quick right at the end.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. I think gosh, this is kind of why I wanted to talk about this in context of Lord of the Rings. And Matt, maybe you can back me up on this. I do think this is a movie that was greenlit and pushed forward in the wake of Lord of the Rings becoming this hugely successful project. And so there are moments where this movie, I think, tries really hard to be another Lord of the Rings. And I think that hurts it. It's not that the big battle at the end of this movie doesn't also take place in the book. It does. There is a battle at the end of this movie between two armies. But the children's involvement in the battle and the way their characters kind of become... Peter just basically becomes Aragorn. And I think that's to the story's detriment, actually. He's just not an interesting character. Peter is. I think he's the weakest of the four children,
and he's not really a character who anyone in particular identifies with.
Yeah.
Like he's too, to put it specifically, he's too old for you to identify with when you're young, and he's too young to identify with when you're old.
I like that.
He acts like too much of an immature kid, but he's obviously like 18 years old.
I wish he'd been a little bit more conflicted. Okay, one question that I have with this is a lot of my criticism sometimes I'm like, how much am I criticizing this movie rather than the book? Because I don't have enough of a, like, when I criticize this movie, am I also criticizing the book? And is it the same situation or better in most cases? And it's been too long since I read them to really identify the difference in where they are.
Yeah,
that's fair. I think the book is trying to be an escapist fantasy for children, right? So it's playing in archetypal characters, and it wants you. I do think the book wants you to kind of want to be Peter a little bit. If you're a young boy reading this book, I think it wants you to be Peter.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I think there's some things that just don't work translated. Like in a book, when you're reading a book about a young boy who gets a sword and a shield and like goes and stands up against an army and fights off an evil wolf, and like that all feels like me as a kid would be like, fuck yeah, I'm into this. When you see it on the screen, it's a little
silly.
It just looks a little silly. Yeah. Like it just looks a little silly. And it's not that it's not the animals that look silly. It's not the CGI that looks silly. It's just like seeing this guy, Peter, who was portrayed pretty young, at the beginning of the movie, and I understand it's supposed to be his growth and like his coming of age, whatever. I don't know. It just didn't really work on me.
I think a non-trivial amount of that is actually the way it looks. It's this very flat, almost like TV-like way of shooting.
Yes.
And the color scheme. Like imagine the fight with the wolf, except imagine it was directed by everyone who was involved in making the Neverending Story.
Yeah.
And you immediately know what I'm talking about. Like it would be darker. There would be more interesting angles. Like by darker, I mean, it would literally be darker. Like there would be a darker color palette, which would give you more of a sense of like, there's danger here. This is not, a Disney cartoon. Which I think was the decision they probably felt they had to go with, because they were trying to appeal to a young audience. And I think it's actually extremely difficult to adapt the Narnia books in this one in particular, because I mean, this book, I don't remember it perfectly well. I actually read it back around the time the movie came out, so a long time ago. But my recollection is that this was the most moralistic of all the Narnia books. And a big sort of, in my opinion, like the reason he wrote it, or at least the dramatic side of the plot, is that you have these siblings who have been put under stress by World War II, although the book never really says that very clearly. And they don't get along very well, and they have all of the natural conflicts that children have amongst each other, but also they love each other. And you know, you see what's the middle boy? What's
Edmund,
his name?
the worst one.
The worst
he
one.
is so hateable at the beginning.
Yeah.
They really went all into the how much of a horrible kid he is. Yeah.
And that's like the most interesting thing about the book, and kind of the most interesting thing about the movie too, actually. Like it's got the most dramatic weight behind it, because you have this kid who is selfish and spiteful, just like many, if not all, children at some point or another. And he screws over his siblings and then feels horrible about it, and they forgive him. And it's like, yeah, this is like a little fantasy version of sibling misunderstandings. And then like I like all of that. It's just then there's also a big fantasy battle tacked on at the end.
Yeah. I mean, Matt, I think the Pevensies are basically the Ninja Turtles, right? Like, I mean, like Peter's Leonardo, Edmund is Raphael. So they have their big interpersonal conflict because Peter wants to lead the Ninja Turtles, and Edmund doesn't like that, and Edmund is cool but rude, as everyone knows.
That's right.
And then Lucy is obviously Michelangelo, which is just the kind of cute one that does silly things.
Yep.
And then Susan is Donatello, who's just kind of there.
Yeah.
This works perfectly.
She does machines.
She does machines.
which is what a bow and arrow is.
No, I really kind of want to see an extrapolated out Ninja Turtles as a literary matrix to view things through. That would be great.
You know, I started with just the Raphael Leonardo thing, and then it all just worked.
Like, well, the thing is, you literally can do literary analysis through the lens of the Ninja Turtles. You can do that. Like, that is it's as valid as any other specific literary theory, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think what this is kind of showing in all seriousness is that both the Ninja Turtles and this book are dealing in some pretty classic sibling conflict tropes, and I think you're right, Matt, that those are the best parts of the movie for sure, when it's really focusing on those things, when we're focusing on the conflict between Peter and Edmund and what that conflict means, when we're dealing with Edmund's selfishness as it transforms into his guilt over what he did and what he caused to happen. I think it is true that on the back of this is this giant battle that we've kind of conscripted Peter to be the general of, which just, it still feels weird to me. Like, again, this is a thing where I think in the book, like, if you're a kid,
there's a lot more time for it.
Well, also. And it's not just like, I think it seems maybe it's just, if you're younger, like that's a definite wish fulfillment thing, that you get to be the person who shows up in the fantasy world, and suddenly everyone looks to you and you get to be the hero that leads the army of magical creatures against the evil witch. And that sounds awesome. But in actuality, Matt and I were talking before we started recording about the moment that the Peter proves himself moment, which
wait, when was that?
when Aslan has him murdered with a wolf,
the Australian wolf.
Yeah. And that's a little weird, right, Matt? I mean, just like it's just like
he's the moral lesson is sometimes you got to kill people.
Yeah,
it's I mean, just in case you haven't seen this movie in a long time, folks, they like basically have this one wolf cornered, and the wolves are kind of the stormtroopers of the evil regime, and the wolf probably could have escaped. But Peter's pointing his sword at it, and Aslan could like intervene and could chase the wolf away, or could like pin the wolf down or something. But instead, he's like, everyone step back. This is Peter's fight. Peter has to kill this wolf. And then Peter stabs the wolf through the heart with his sword, and is like traumatized by it, evidently.
Yeah.
And then it's like, and then Aslan, who's the Jesus Christ figure, is like, good job, Peter, you killed him. I represent Jesus Christ.
Okay, he doesn't actually say that, but he does. Yeah, I and like it's weird because again, I think this is the kind of thing where because this movie hit me at a time when I was adult, I was seeing it in ways much different. Like I don't think as a kid that would have bothered me at all. Like I would have just been like, oh yeah, well the wolf's bad and he's got to get rid of the wolf, and he does, and yay, he's strong boy now, hooray. But yeah, I don't know. It's just a little weird and it's a little silly, and I don't know. What do you think, Alex? Are we off base here?
No. I definitely see it, especially watching it on the rewatch this time. I mean, at the end, he like 1v1s Jadis the Witch, and it's just like there's no way. Like, she should be like playing with him because it's this kid.
Yeah, like at some point, size in these kind of fights matter. And he's still a young kid. How old is Peter supposed to be? Is he supposed to be like 16? I really don't know.
That's what it feels like, but I couldn't tell you.
I mean, in the movie, they seem to show that like he's jealous of the soldiers who get to go off to war, and he feels like inadequate, which suggests that he's only slightly younger than them. Although I don't actually know how old the character was in the books.
Yeah, I tried to look it up and I couldn't find like a definitive like.
He's the older sibling. I think that's what matters.
Yeah, like, he's the eldest sibling, and so he feels the responsibility of taking care of all his siblings, but also the draw to go to war. I mean, that's such a fascinating thing here because like
it's rewarded.
Like the World War II metaphor as the 100 Years of Winter in Narnia, right? As this cruelty and this awfulness, and the war has done this. The war is what's taken these children away from their home and brought them to this new place. And then the lesson seems to be like, well, you gotta do the war though, because that's how you win, is you do the war. But
I mean, if you're gonna do a war, it's probably the least bad one.
True. I mean, true.
Not on the part of the soldier. I mean, morally, etc. But narratively, morally. Anyway, it is strange. Well, as a different thing. Talking about Aslan as a Christ figure, it's interesting. In my current conception of our boy JC, I usually the things that I view as the most positive, as the ones that get celebrated the most, are like the compassion and the forgiveness in those things. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting with having a big old lion represent him, is that it shows more of the masculine aspects, like the sort of like the anger in some parts. Multiple times he just shuts down dissent with a roar, right?
Yeah.
And I thought that was really interesting because it's like denying dialogue or whatever else, is just standing ground as that admirable aspect. And just I thought that was very interesting contrast to what I would have expected in a Christian allegory.
Yeah, I think you're right. The only thing I'll say is I think C.S. Lewis like pushed back against the idea that this was supposed to be allegory. I mean, it's obviously like it works. It's very obvious. Like the lion sacrifices himself and then is reborn. It's not subtle, but like I don't think he set out to write this necessarily knowing Aslan is going to be Jesus in this world. I think he's a very, very Christian person, and everything he observes it in his world is through this lens. And so when he's crafting a story of another land, he infuses it with this Christianity, similar to a way Tolkien infused his story with his own Christianity. I think Tolkien is much more subtle about it in his, because he spent so much more time on the crafting of the world, where I think C.S. Lewis was literally just like, lions are cool, and thought that a lion would be a cool animal to.
There's probably a little bit more than that, but yeah.
It's interesting. I don't know where I fall on this, because C.S. Lewis is someone who has thought a tremendous amount about morality.
Yes.
Like the Screwtape Letters are they're an extremely good read. It literally doesn't matter what religious point you're coming from. They're just such a clever way of talking about morality, and they're full of so much like wisdom. And so obviously there is an implicit morality in the way Aslan is positioned, because regardless of whether he's supposed to be specifically Jesus, he is the god of this world, basically. And that continues to be true throughout all of Narnia books. He's always the, if not the Jesus figure, then he's basically the angelic presence that is going to keep you safe, or defeat the bad guys. And it's and like the moral sort of thrust, I guess, of the children commit a sin, right? And then the Satan, i.e. the witch, wants the children's lives in exchange for their sin, and Aslan sacrifices his life in their stead. Like that's obvious. That's like obviously the Christian sacrifice story. I admit that there's very little other than that about Aslan, but there's
well, I mean, even his death scene, like the shaving of his beard or his mane is like very, very much symbolically the abuse that Christ went through before he was crucified. Like
I really like that scene it's something.
Okay, so here's my thing about that scene. I think it's one of the best looking scenes in the movie. I think it's one of the most dramatic scenes in the movie, but it feels so tonally weird to me because it's in the same movie as like Santa Claus comes and gives us presents. I don't know, like it just, I think it's a good scene. I totally agree with you. I think, but one of the weird things about this movie to me is that just like it's kind of tonally all over the place, and I think the book can handle those tonal shifts a little bit better than this movie does, because at times this is such clearly specifically meant for children that were probably your age, Alex, when they were watching it, and then sometimes
it was very memorable. That's why it's part of the reason I mention it.
Sure, I bet, yeah.
Well, I don't think C.S. Lewis should have put Santa Claus in the book either. So,
what are you talking about? He's a cornerstone of Christian mythology.
And he's just there. He's just riding around.
Yeah, it's clause 3 through 12.
But that is such a fundamental childhood experience that like it makes total sense to me that that's in the book, because like imagine a world in which Christmas never came. That's like a child's nightmare. Like the beginning of Narnia is set up to be a kid's nightmare. It's snowy all the time. They can't really go outside because it's too cold. Christmas never comes. The only good thing about it being cold, there's no life. There's no play. Like it's set up to be the worst possible thing for a kid. And then we get to see it return to its glory. And so like it makes total sense to me why that was included. I mean, it's like the same reason they include Christmas in the Harry Potter books. It's like because kids love Christmas. And so it's like one of the most important things that surrounds a year of a child. And so I don't know, like that made sense to me, but it's just, it's a weird juxtaposition. Like we're shooting back and forth to extremes in this story a lot. I think
I'm just incapable of watching this movie correctly because I'm just too old, and that's I'm sort of not joking, because like so like for example, I very clearly remember my dad actually read us at least one of the Narnia books when I was pretty little, and I remember him reading, I don't think it's this book, I think it's the one where they have the magic rings. He's reading the one about the wood. There's a place called the Wood Between the Worlds, which now that I'm an adult, I realize refers to a forest. When I was a kid, I thought it was like a big wooden like expanse made of wood, because it was called
like a deck.
That is more like Lovecraftian to me.
Yeah. Well, it right, exactly. And so like here's the thing is like my head is full of all of these extremely vivid images that were probably completely wrong because I didn't have enough world knowledge. Yeah, and so like that's the level on which I think these stories are actually meant to work, is like, what do you care about? You care about your bratty little brother being selfish and getting you captured by a witch, and or maybe you identify with that character and you care about getting in trouble because you lied to get sweets or whatever. Like these are, and then Santa Claus comes and rewards you, and like this all makes perfect sense in kid logic. Like I totally believe that C.S. Lewis like was thinking in terms of kid logic and kid brains when he wrote it. And then like you try to make it, I mean, really any movie you make out of that is going to be an odd duck because it's sort of not meant to be taken literally. It's
For me, the Santa Claus in particular, actually, I don't know about tone, but as a kid and watching it sort of with remembrances of that first experience, it actually, when it came up, it did fit to me. The parts where it does start to feel off is when they reach the camp with Aslan. That's the part where things feel a lot thinner to me. And the stuff with Peter and sort of the sort of like these skills and assumptions and sort of messages that these children are receiving from Aslan and other things kind of don't fully appear to me, or I feel like I have to logic it out rather than feeling it shown. But up until that point, everything with the snow, with very few exceptions, felt grounded to me now and then.
Yeah, I mean, like Aslan has a whole ass like military tent, and I don't understand why the lion has like a military tent.
Well, it's battle tactics.
Sure. He's got to stay warm in his tent.
I think I agree that everything until they reach the camp is actually great, and then I guess the only bit after that that's great is the Aslan sacrifice scene. I don't know if I should say great necessarily, but solid. Like it works. It hangs together.
I mean, there's a weird like this is not a long book. It's a kind of a long movie, but I feel like there's scenes where things feel rushed. Like the Aslan goes to free Edmund scene. Like I felt like that happened real fast. Like Edmund's sitting there tied to the tree and being tortured, and then the army's there, and then he's gone, and I'm like, wait. This feels like it was going to be like a whole big plot movement, like to get Edmund back, and they just kind of yada over it. Although I will say the scene like where Edmund like the next morning the kids wake up and see that Edmund's there and Aslan's like giving him a talking to. I think that's a fantastically shot scene. I think the kid that plays Edmund did such a good job in this movie. I think he's the best of all four of the actors. Like, because you can just see the way he's holding himself, how dejected he looks, like how he's obviously totally recognized how much he screwed up, and God is literally telling him the sins that he just committed. I don't know. I really appreciated how that scene was shot.
Regarding Edmund, I know we're kind of meandering at this point,
fine.
But
that's what this show does.
I felt, even though it is for sweets, I really did buy into Edmund wanting to see Jadis again. Like, I know it says it multiple times, and I think you can write it off as, oh, what a terrible motivation for this kid to sell out everyone for sweets. But I think it very much felt to me that, no, actually, he's going there for like that promise of power and power over his siblings, and also just because he was told not to, and also because she seemed like supportive of him.
Yeah. The witch plays him perfectly.
Yeah.
And my only complaint about it is she lets the charade end too soon.
Yeah, like, I totally agree. Like there's times like on the sled, right? There's all of the hints of imperiousness and everything where I'm like, oh, she's clearly, it's being shown well that she is actually bad guy, right? But as soon as Edmund gets there, it's just immediately go to prison. This is probably accurate to the books, which is one of those things where I was talking about where like I don't know how much I'm criticizing like a story movement that was in the book, and that I don't know, it feels like if I'm criticizing the book without the book knowledge, then it feels like it would be off. But regardless, did feel like he should have been like whined and dined a little bit more, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, just like
humored.
It seems that like winning over one of them to your side is like super advantageous. And isn't this a plot beat in Neverending Story too, Matt? Now that you brought up Neverending Story, like where the bad character like completely wins over one of the main characters. I'm pretty sure.
Does that happen?
I'm pretty not in the first one. I'm pretty sure in the second one.
I haven't seen the second one.
Oh, okay.
Weirdly,
it's not as good, but like where he is totally convinced that like the witch is the good character, and I agree that is not the way the book goes. So this is kind of a weird criticism to say. I agree with you, Mr. Lewis, but I also think like there's adaptive choices that you can make to
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry, just to cap that off with like, if instead of going straight to prison, he's like, oh well, if you're not going to give me my stuff, I want to go back to my siblings, or they're waiting for me or whatever. And then she's like, no, you can't leave, and then like locks him in a tower, right? And then when he doesn't give information, that's when she fully turns on him. You know, you're no longer useful to me. That would have felt like an earned bit of progress to me.
Yeah. I mean, the unfortunate thing for the witch is that she like backed the worst pony, because like if she wanted one of them to convince the other three to come with him, she picked the worst possible one, because they're not going to listen to Edmund at all.
Who else would be corrupted by her?
Yeah, I mean, probably nobody.
Yeah. But like I think this is it's interesting, because I'm listening to y'all, and like my recollection of the witch from the books is that she is actually just too horrible to keep up the charade for long.
Sure.
Like
yeah.
And I mean, I think Tilda Swinton, obviously, as always, does a fantastic job, where like you see she's like tall and regal and beautiful and like, but like very cold.
And she snaps quick too.
And she's like, she has very little patience.
Yeah.
And so like you see why Edmund is drawn to her, but also like she's not good at pretending. And I think Tilda Swinton carries that too. I mean, yes, like tactically speaking, she should have been nicer to him, but like I think this is sort of one of those, you know, Tolkien-esque like evil always destroys itself things, where she's just too awful to succeed at corrupting a child if the child has its wits about it.
Right. Yeah, no, I think the movie like gestures towards that for sure, that she just can't help but be terrible. And I mean, she's kind of a one-note villain, like, and not that I'm saying there's anything wrong with that, like the movie's not really about her, so we don't need to spend a lot of time with her, but she's really, we don't actually learn.
She's not a complex figure.
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't even know what her. I know I read all the books, and I know like the books sort of contain her backstory. I just I don't remember what it is though.
I don't remember what it is either. Just the Magician's Nephew book contains her backstory.
Yeah, she's from another universe where I think she ruined it, and then she goes to the other one to also ruin it.
Yeah, so she's totally the devil.
So this is also the first time I've watched this movie after reading the Magician's Trilogy by Lev Grossman, and after watching the Magician's show that was on Sci-Fi, and I found I like just could not separate these two things in my head now. Like the entire time they're in Narnia, I'm like, Fillory, that's Fillory. Oh, look at those chairs. Yeah, that's Fillory. And it's just like, it's so weird, because obviously a lot of the Magicians is based on that stuff, but I couldn't separate them in my head anymore.
That's funny. Yeah, I haven't seen the TV show, so perhaps I had an easier time separating it.
It's very, very different from the books, but in like really cool ways. Like I love them both for entirely different reasons.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think that we can have a little Magician sidebar, because I feel like a lot of what Lev Grossman is doing with the Magicians is trying to explore and understand the cool things that C.S. Lewis was able to do, and the things he was able to make you feel. Like you're quite emotionally and sort of imaginatively labile when you're a child, and you can be pushed into all these, you know, imagination worlds, and we're not quite so easily compelled to feel these feelings when we're older. But I think Lev Grossman managed to get pretty close to it, actually, in terms of dialing in what exactly is cool about Narnia.
Sure. And an examination of why don't I feel as strong about this place as I did when I was younger, maybe. Like it feels like Lev Grossman's The Magicians is kind of this episode where you and I are like, man, this stuff wasn't that good, but kids love it. So what's going on here? And I think that's a lot of what The Magicians is doing. Is our main character was obsessed with Narnia when he was younger, and built it up as this answer to all his problems, and then found out it was not that, because he saw it with his adult eyes, which are terrible, with terrible adult eyes. So yeah,
Damn, Scott, you're striking me with some feelings of loss right now.
I don't know if you've ever read those books. They're pretty, I'm not going to say controversial, but divisive. Like some people really love them and some people really do not like them. I mean, it's one of those things. We had a whole episode when we talked about unlikable protagonists, because the protagonist of that book, Quentin, is a character who is designed to be awful.
Yeah, you're just sort of always rolling your eyes and cringing at his behavior, and that's obviously by design.
Yeah.
So Edmund, but somehow worse.
Yeah. Like imagine Edmund, but he didn't learn his lessons.
Right.
And then also he gets everything he ever wanted and he's still a miserable little shit about it.
Well, of course.
Just imagine like Edmund devouring Turkish Delight and still complaining for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, he would. He would, though.
Yeah, because he's like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, because actually, this fucking movie made me think I would like Turkish Delight, and then I tried Turkish Delight, and I was like, no, I do not enjoy this treat. Why did he want it so bad?
I had the same feeling. I think that's pretty universal of an experience, actually.
Yeah. Why did he ask for Turkish Delight of all things?
How did she know about him too? That's my question.
She's fucking
found the box.
Magic, yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, I don't know. What else do we want to say about this movie? Here's the thing. I think I want to kind of talk about the CGI a little bit, because I think for 2005, they actually did a pretty good job. Like,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think C.S. Lewis famously said, like, he never wants to see these books adapted because they would look too goofy. And obviously he said that before the existence of computers and computer graphics. And so in 2005, I think this is like the first time a version of the story could have been told to make it look realistic. And I think it pulls it off.
It's in, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I feel like you're right that it's the first time it could have been pulled off to look realistic. And it was also the last time that it was super impressive and novel to see a big war involving CGI animals.
That's a good point. I did not feel anything that I might have felt as a kid watching it originally.
Because now like everything has a giant CGI battle with monsters.
Right. Yeah.
But this was okay. I mean, Lord of the Rings preceded this, but Lord of the Rings, you're mostly looking at like orcs, which are basically guys in costumes, or you're looking at orcs from a distance, which are low res CGI models. Whereas this was actually a lot of pretty cool, like, this when the two like cheetahs run at each other and collide, that's pretty awesome, actually.
Yeah.
And the hippogriffs are dropping rocks from above, and then one of them gets turned into stone in the air and
shatters.
I was not getting unstatued by Aslan.
No, Aslan do not breathe on that, Aslan. That's bad.
Oh God,
I'm picturing
it's everywhere.
They put it back together, but it's still cut to pieces.
Oh my God.
Anyway,
what the hell's wrong with you guys? So, but no, I mean, it's funny because I agree totally that like, even while watching it this time, I was like, yeah, I mean, obviously you can see the CGI is not up to par nowadays, but it was pretty good for the time. Yeah.
Especially at the beginning when, maybe I was watching on a computer that had, like a color changer filter thing. So maybe it wasn't exactly the same as a high definition, thing, but, the beavers, for example, when they first show up, like looked very, smooth and real to me. I mean, as much as a talking beaver with talking beaver movements can be, but
I think it's fascinating because I agree with you. And I think the early movie, like the environments look so good too. Like I love the Beaver's Dam. Like I think it's so fantastically built and decorated. Like it looks cozy and comfortable. Like it looks like a place you'd want to hang out. I think the same with Mr. Tumnus's house. And I feel like all of these places were abandoned at that moment that we've already talked about, where they got to the encampment, and then everything there. I think, Matt, you kind of talked about how it looked like a TV movie from in that one scene, and I think everything when they get to the war encampment, it does feel like that. It does feel like we've lost. Like I felt watching this movie like I should be awed by Narnia more. Like the snow is melting and Narnia is coming back, and this is like this magical land coming back to life for the first time in 100 years. And I didn't feel that. And I felt like I understood and I could see Narnia more when it's the smaller locales where people are forced to kind of huddle together because of the cold. And the ice went away and Narnia became less interesting to me, which is not what you would expect.
Agree.
Yeah. Paradoxically started to feel less magical when there were centaurs everywhere.
Yeah. Because I think it just goes to flat war movie mode, and it's almost as if like maybe there was just a second unit director that was doing the big battle, because they had to. There's a lot of CGI in there, but they had to shoot the scenes with the actors anyway, and so they had to composite all this stuff together. And maybe there was just a second unit guy who was working on all that stuff, and it was just kind of flat action. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's possible. I definitely think just to speak of like, I guess color grading. You were pointing out everything prior to when the snow starts melting just feels different, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that it's like you're in this fairly stark black and white environment with hints of you go inside a nice cozy little wooden house which feels nice and cozy because you know how inhospitable it is outside, and then there's just like a massive shift in terms of the literal color of the images when everything thaws, and it makes everything actually feel quite different. It's interesting.
Yeah. And I mean, like, I think wasn't Lord of the Rings like the entire thing color corrected in like a sepia type tone? I feel like I remember reading Lord of the Rings was like one of the first movies to use digital color correction in this kind of broad strokes way of like taking the whole movie and making it a little sepia.
Yeah, I mean, you can definitely recognize Lord of the Rings color scheme at a glance. So
yeah, and I think you're right that I feel like they didn't do that here, and maybe they should have. And it's not like they needed to do the sepia thing. I actually think like that became overdone very quickly. Like everyone started doing it, and that became. So I'm not saying like they should have made this movie look more like Lord of the Rings, but they didn't do anything with it in that latter half. I don't know.
I mean, I think you could argue that it was intentional. That it's like, okay, now Narnia is coming back, and we're gonna make this like we're gonna make everything all look like the knights and the heraldry and the colorful doublets and bright filigreed gold armor, and I don't know.
It echoes to me the ending scene where they're all grown up, right? And then they go back through the wardrobe. When they're riding through the forest, it does feel very dreamlike to me. And that's the same kind of feeling, I think, just gone further by the fact that they're not children anymore. And they're strangers to us. But yeah, it does go more away from the grounded coldness to free fantasy dreamlike qualities.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that ending scene does feel weird and otherworldly and dreamlike. And I really like it. I like that touch. Although I do think like just imagine just how royally fucked up these children will be remembering an entire life that they lived.
Well, that's the thing. It's also I think my headcanon is that they lived like 200 300 years there, because otherwise how are you going to forget your entire, especially Peter, and Susan, how are you going to forget where you grew up? But anyway, to me, when they were leaving, I wish they focused more on Lucy, because she was the one that I most wanted to know what she's like when she grows up, and how she changes and how she feels, especially going back. I did not care at all about Edmund or Peter's feeling after they've grown up. Like that's just but Lucy,
I mean, this is another one of those things where the magicians jumps to my mind, because like because the idea that they spend like a lifetime, if not more than a lifetime, in Narnia, it's like that's all done in the like like the fairy tale tone, basically, where it's like, and then they live and
Right.
It's like, oh, did they have any children? Did they like
I don't want to think about
like
that.
yeah, like what happened to them actually? Like did they actually live full adult lives? Like, no, we're not what the hell is wrong with you? Why are you asking these questions? That they just lived there for a super long time, but basically had the minds of children, and then when they went back into their child bodies, they probably just like had wistful, hazy memories of Narnia, right?
They just had in the later things, Susan is like, oh, it was just playing pretend, right? So they lived a fantasy story, and they don't have to get married in the fantasy story. One thing that did flash through my mind, that scene that they're chasing a stag, right? Are they hunting it? The animals talk. Is that was it like are they just gonna like hug it or what?
This is the part where I don't remember if I'm confusing the mythology of Fillory with the mythology of Narnia, but I do think there was a point, there was like a magical stag that existed in Narnia that they were trying to catch.
That was definitely in Fillory, but maybe it was also in Narnia.
Could have been.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right, Matt, because I do think Fillory and the Magicians like has a whole subplot where two of the characters live an entire life in another world. I might be thinking of the TV show, honestly. I don't. Jesus, I'm all over the place. But there is a whole point where they do that, and like the show deals with the actual psychological and emotional repercussions of that, because two of the characters are like best friends going into it. Then they spend an entire lifetime with each other, and they fall in love, and they like, and then they all return back to the normal life, and they just have to like deal with that and those feelings, and like, do we continue this relationship on in our normal lives now? What would that even look like? It's just it's wild, and this is not like asking the story to do that kind of thing is ridiculous, because it's not that type of story.
Is there a scene where one of them stands wistfully at a window and plays the flute that he learned how to play when he was in the other world?
I don't remember.
Okay.
Maybe, probably. So I mean, like, I feel like we've had a very weird conversation about this movie.
But
I think it's because it's a weird movie.
It is a bit.
It's a weird movie, and the source material is also weird. Like Narnia is that's what's great about it is, okay, so like, look, my kids, they read a lot of books actually, and sometimes I read the books that they read, and what's interesting is that I like the books that they read, which shouldn't be a criticism, right? Because it's like, these are well written. One of them is very funny and has an alarming number of Dark Tower references in it. But Narnia actually makes no sense. But it makes no sense in a way that appeals to kid logic. And that's the thing, is like, now there are no Narnias being written right now, because the publisher will look at your attempt to write a Narnia book and go, Santa Claus, seriously? Try again. And so like, there's something very precious actually about the shagginess of the Narnia world and mythos.
I think that's a good point. And I think that kind of, when you look at this movie, it is very clear to me that what Disney was trying to do here was to start a franchise. I mean, they didn't title this movie The Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe. They titled this movie The Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This was supposed to be the beginning of, this was supposed to be another Harry Potter. Like, they wanted, we're going to go through each and every one of the books and we're going to make a movie on them.
It's funny, even as a kid, I was like, oh, a Narnia sequel. Okay. It's really interesting. It probably was maybe only the first one that got me excited for it. And I think either that one or immediately after, I was already really over it.
Well, because it's like, I don't actually think these books work as a franchise, because like, it's different characters every time. You go back to Narnia and hundreds of years have passed. And so it's not a recognizable Narnia. You don't get to see your old friend characters, because they're all gone, except for Aslan. He's the only.
To be fair, how many characters did we care about in Narnia? Really? Tumnus? Okay.
Well, that's a problem.
Yeah.
We don't have a Merry and Pippin to keep the heart.
It's just not a very franchisable series, I don't think. And actually, they did make 2 sequels, which I actually did not know about. I did not know that they actually made 2 sequels, and now I kind of want to watch them because they made Prince Caspian, which is, I think, the direct sequel, because it's both Edmund and Lucy going back.
But Susan has grown up, and she's a woman now, and women don't like childish things.
They can't go to Narnia anymore.
Which is just okay. That's all right.
and then they have Voyage of the Dawn Treader they made, but that one was actually released by Fox. So like Disney said fuck off to this franchise, and they gave up after the first one, I think. And so the other 2 were produced and distributed by different companies. And now, of course, because Disney is consuming everything, they own those again. But that's kind of wild. I think I'm mostly curious about Voyage of the Dawn Treader because I think the Wood Between Worlds thing you're thinking of, Matt, is that book, which I think was my favorite of the Narnia books.
I don't know if it shows up in that one also, but it's the Magician's Nephew. That's the one that has all the wood between the worlds, which also just something struck my mind earlier. The wood as a Lovecraftian thing, the canonical interpretation of that, I think, is also Lovecraftian. It was a little scary to me as a kid.
That's the thing. No, it really stuck with me. The idea that there's a kind of interdimensional hub dimension, which consists of a forest that's full of these pools. And if you go into the pools, you go into different worlds.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
The endless nature of it is terrifying to me as a kid.
Yeah.
And okay, and
this is just the Magicians again. This is just the Magicians.
Yeah, exactly. The Magicians has that city. But,
okay, gotcha.
He got that. He got that from Narnia, obviously.
Yeah. The world that the witch comes from, I think it's the first world that the kids go into. Spoilers for The Magician's Nephew. But what's gone wrong with it is that the sun's like a red giant.
Oh yeah.
And that was even scary to me because it was like a physical, like, science problem. You know, like. It like the world was so old that the sun expanded and was too big in the sky, and it was red and bad.
God,
like,
that was such a terrifying scene. I vividly. I didn't they like find that there was like a city full of statues that she had made, just like in Narnia?
That sounds about right.
See, what's funny is I conflated this with A Wrinkle in Time.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Which is another movie that's sort of a way trippier than you would think kids would be able to handle, but actually it's the opposite, where kids can I think more easily visualize ridiculous things. So I think the moral is I need to write a children's book that has a lot of really weird imagery in it.
There you go. But to go back to what I was talking about, I kind of want to try these movies. They're probably not very good, but I'm curious about Voyage of the Dawn Treader, which is a book I quite liked.
There's probably, to be honest, I did want more stuff with these kids because something in this movie was that I felt that it was a little thin between the 4 of them, right? Like if it was just Lucy and Edmund, which it is, right, in that one. Yes. Yeah, that sounds a lot more complex with those 2 and the interplay of siblinghood with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want more of the sibling interaction, have I got the movie for you? It's 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Has there been a Doofcast on that? I do want to rewatch. That was a childhood movie. It's the time one with the.
Well, that was a good one too.
That's a bad one. That's
it was really good. You know why it was really good? Because I loved it and I watched it like 30 times. Yeah. That means it was a good movie.
The best one is the one that came out in 1990, in which they made like a dark, actually like for teenagers movie, and so all the 7-year-olds that were watching it, like me, thought we were the coolest people ever because you're watching this cool teenagers do things. Such a good movie.
Raphael says "damn" in the first few minutes,
like twice.
Wait, is that the animated one or
no?
No, this is a live action one with
a hardcore live action Ninja Turtles.
I mean, like I'm saying hardcore, like it's not actually that.
No,
hardcore,
I know, but
it's like
I mean, they murder Shredder at the end.
They
violently.
They crush Shredder in a garbage truck. Like he falls into the back of a garbage truck, and then they press the button that compresses the garbage.
and you see his helmet crush underneath the
and Casey Jones goes, "Oops."
Well, is it as sudden and shocking as a lion just swallowing a witch's head whole. Which
No,
is
it
exactly what
actually
happened in
perfectly
this.
fits the movie it's in
Yeah,
because it's like a very it's like Raphael almost dies
okay.
in this movie.
Yeah, they
He's
just
like in a coma
beat
for
the
a
shit out of
month.
Yeah, they just severely beat him, and he has to recover. And also, Casey Jones and April O'Neil, they fucking.
It's true though. God, we need to do an episode on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because both Matt and I rewatched this movie lately, and it's so good. It's so good.
It's so fun.
It's wild how good it is.
Mhm.
It's like the perfect. The thing that's funny about it is parents were so mad about it that the next one went like way more kiddish. Like everyone, like when you talk to someone about the 90s Turtles movies, everyone thinks about the second one, The Secret of the Ooze, because that's the one with Toka and
Right.
Razar and the ninja rap in it and
Yeah,
Vanilla Ice and all that
Ice,
stuff. But actually, that's a bad movie because they had all these rules for them. First of all, the turtles can't say damn anymore.
We took away Leonardo's swords, right?
Yeah, they took away.
That was
They
upsetting.
weren't allowed to use the weapons because they're like, how can like these swords? There's a kids movie. You can't use swords. So they have the weapons still, but they never take them out ever.
Oh yeah,
And they just use
Good
other
stuff.
things. And yeah, it's just a bummer. It's a bummer.
Yeah. I'm
Like-
gonna go watch the third one now. Though the third one's the time travel one, right?
Yeah, it's not. It's more like the second one.
it's the
than
best
the
one
first
of the series.
Oh,
In the
okay.
first movie, Corey Feldman plays Donatello, or at least the voice of Donatello, and it's pretty great.
Now that you say that, I know that, and I can hear that in my head.
How we have to move on because we're supposed to be talking about the Chronicles of Narnia.
Hey! You're the one that brought it up twice.
I know.
Anyway,
can't help
The
myself.
Magicians is just a great series of books.
I guess I have to see that you've made so many references to it, and I need to be educated.
I don't like. I know for a fact that you will love the TV show. It's so weird and it's extremely horny too. It's like the horniest.
I remember
horniest TV.
the actors being very attractive. That
Yeah.
was the one thing I remember from the trailers and such.
Yeah. You might like the books. I think you'll get something out of the books for sure. They're just I know that they're divisive. Like Michael hates that book, doesn't he, Matt?
I think he only read the first one, and the thing is, not to spoil, but there is an arc across the three books.
Yeah.
And so what you get in the first book is not what you're going to get for the subsequent two books.
Very true. Very true. Yeah. Okay, so that is a whole bunch of topics, but mostly we just finished talking about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, a movie I think we're all pretty mixed on, but here's the thing, Alex, I totally get like why this movie was so important to you. Like, and I feel like if I was your age when I first saw it, I'd be right there with you. Like this is literally my Ninja Turtles. Like someone probably could watch the Ninja Turtles movie that we were just talking about for the first time at like 35 and be like, what the fuck? What are you talking about, Scott?
Yeah.
All right. Well, ask me to come on in 10 years.
I mean, I think my final comment on this movie is that it would be improved actually by being shorter. Just literally just cut out the bad stuff. I mean, I think this is probably like the fifth time I've said that on a Doofcast, but like the ending stuff, the battle stuff at the end probably could be pared down quite a bit. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of pieces throughout the middle part that I think feel a bit slow, especially now, because I feel like we've become stupider as a society and we expect things to happen faster. So, but it's a very long movie though, and so I think it would be improved, and it could be. I think it could actually be potentially improved quite a lot by just tightening it up.
Said, if it was just cut down, I think I would still have a lot of those feelings of the thinness of some of the characters and their interactions. So yeah. I don't know if it's just a couple more scenes with not even all of them. It's fine that Susan's not a character. I mean, I guess she doesn't need to be.
I mean, what is Susan's character? Like,
she's not.
I feel like what they were trying to do is like she's the super cautious one that doesn't want to ever take any risks.
No, she's just a nagging woman. That's her character archetype. Like that's look. I was reading online, people saying a timeless classic. That shows up on some of the critic reviews, and like that's kind of true, but like everything ages. And there's just stuff that like you do maybe notice. Okay, like her special item, you know, her magical item that like works really well is to call for help. Like that's because she's a maiden. She can't. I mean, yeah, she has a bow and arrow, but she doesn't use it. So anyway,
yeah.
My point is
she's no Katniss, that's for sure.
No, and in the later books, in where she doesn't return, is because that she's a woman now, and women don't care about fun things, and she just cares about being pretty and stuff, which is like a little yikes at this point. But
yeah, I mean, I think that there's still room for her to do. It was funny to me that like the whole battle part, Lucy and Susan are just like lying on top of the corpse of Aslan.
Yeah,
that's just what they're doing. That's just what they're doing. They're just hanging out over there. And at least Lucy gets something to do at the end with her like magical drops of healing potion that she gets to. Hopefully, she does not use on that poor hippogriff that turned into 1,000 pieces. But
doesn't she also have a knife?
Yeah.
Yes, which she can apparently throw with perfect accuracy.
Yeah, how did she learn how to do that?
It's magic. It's fine.
I'm having like a really vivid desire to make a meme that juxtaposes like her with the knife and like Alia in the Dune David Lynch movie with the knife with like blood on it.
Oh my god.
Euthanizing Harkonnens.
Jesus.
Anyway.
Your typical fantasy story.
I think that's going to do it for our discussion of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Not a terrible movie, but I like James McAvoy. He was good.
Yeah. I think it prompted an interesting and far-ranging discussion.
That is certainly very true.
I think it's still good for kids, and the beginning is still pretty cool. No pun intended.
Doof.
All right, folks, we have to now move on to the results of last week's listener vote on our episode of I was blanking on the name of the movie, and I was trying to think of it as I was talking. Bedazzled is the name of the movie. Matt and I talked about this movie last week. We quite enjoyed the movie, but we both decided to vote no on its entrance into our canon because, well,
Tragic.
it was just not peak any of the things.
Yeah, not peak Brendan Fraser, not peak Faust, not peak
Harold Ramis.
Yeah, just it was good. Not
was fun.
Great though.
It was fun. And our listeners, Matt, agreed with our vote. They voted 60% to 40% no. So sorry, Bedazzled, you are not entered into our canon of greatest films of all time. We got a couple notes. Yvonne said that they love Brendan Fraser, but just don't think this movie quite cuts it. And Riader said, close, but no cigar. Blast from the Past is a better Brendan Fraser comedy, in my opinion. The movie's very watchable, but rather unremarkable on its own.
Yep. So you know what that means. Y'all got to suggest us another Brendan Fraser movie.
Yeah. Let's just induct Brendan Fraser into the canon. How about we do that?
I don't see any reason why not. It's our canon.
Could we just do deconstructing Fraser?
You literally could.
No,
He's not a director, but
just consume all of his movies and appearances.
Yeah.
Just do all the Mummy movies. That's all you need.
Well, I mean, just the first one, really.
Yeah. We don't pretend, just like the third Ninja Turtles movie, we don't pretend we don't allow the third Mummy movie to exist. It's very bad.
That's fair enough.
Very bad.
I want to review his.
So now does Bedazzled get Phantom Zoned, or is that?
No. It's not that. It's not bad enough to be jettisoned from
from
the
existence.
Earth. Yeah.
Into the place between worlds.
It's just pretty good. I think people should go to revisit it for sure, but I don't want it on a list of here is Doof Media's greatest films ever list.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
So thank you so much to everyone who participated in that, and thank you for our council for bringing that to us. I look forward to what they bring us next month, because at this point, Matt, you just never really know. I did not think we were going to be talking about Bedazzled, and there we were. Yeah,
it is. So far, it has met all of my wildest dreams of being just the most eclectic mix of things that I'm like, really? Okay. And then we always have fun talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Doof. All right. I wanted to wrap up our conversation this week by kind of revisiting the state of film and entertainment in our ever-changing world. Matt, I think the last time you and I talked about this, things were looking good. I think Godzilla vs. Kong had come out and performed really well at the box office. People were going to see that movie in the theater, despite it also being available on HBO Max. And we were feeling pretty good about the return of movie theaters and movies as entertainment. And since then, things have not gone well for anything.
Oh no.
Yeah. Movies are not making any money, Matt. They're not doing well at all. The Black Widow movie did not do very well. There was a movie that came out a couple weeks ago called Free Guy, which is a Ryan Reynolds movie. And Ryan Reynolds is one of the few actors left in Hollywood that can like get people to turn out for a movie. And they just did not turn out for this movie. I think it's done okay, but it's not going to make back its budget. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because so I mean, the international box office for Black Widow was like 370 million.
Mm-hmm.
The budget was only 200 million, so that's not as good as they like those Marvel movies to be. But it's not like it's well, I guess they like it to be twice as big, generally speaking.
It's got to be more than twice its big to make its money.
Yeah, that's not so good. But
like double the budget, and that's marketing. So
okay. Well, then how badly did Free Guy do? Let me see. Free Guy. Well, we only have the first weekend. Yeah, it's doing pretty bad. It's pretty bad.
Look, it's good when you see the advertisements for the movie on taxi cabs everywhere.
Yeah,
which is how I heard about this movie.
I saw the movie, actually. My wife and I went to the theater and saw it because she loves Ryan Reynolds, and it was a fun movie. It was very fun. I enjoyed it. I think people should go see it. It's a good theater movie. But I was thinking a lot today because I've been listening to a podcast on The Ringer. They were doing like a documentary series on Siskel and Ebert, and they finished it today, where the last episode came out, and they were talking about, right about the time of Siskel and Ebert's death. Siskel died in the late 90s. Ebert died, I think, in 2012, I think. They kind of witnessed the change in the media landscape pretty dramatically, especially for being a critic and for what movies meant to culture. And the weird thing that I'm thinking about now is, like, when is the last time a movie was like a cultural item that everyone was talking about,
I feel like what are you pointing out as different from Endgame, for example?
Well, I mean, I think Endgame is the last one.
Okay, I see.
I know there was a pandemic. What I'm thinking though is that just like this is a trend that was happening already, and the pandemic just pressed fast forward on all these things. Like I don't know if we're ever going to get back to a place like, I feel like, in the 80s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, movies were the cultural thing that, like, they were the most important cultural touchstone for a lot of people, especially in this country. And I just don't think that's the case anymore. And like, we're just talking about The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. If you try to make a Narnia series in 2021, you're not making a movie. You're making a TV show, like 100%. Like, no one is going to make a Chronicles of Narnia movie. They're going to make a show. And I like, we talked a long time about how I was very optimistic and hopeful that the return to the theaters. And I know the Delta variant stuff is happening right now, which is skewing the numbers. People are afraid again, and they're not going out again. But I really think we've fundamentally shifted culturally away from the movie as an important object in culture.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is just that there is so much entertainment now.
Yeah.
That it used to be. I mean, I'm thinking back to, like, for example, when the Phantom Menace came out, that was the thing that was happening in the world. Like,
right.
Culturally, like, it almost didn't even matter that the movie was bad. Like, no one even like noticed that it was bad for like at least a few years.
Yeah.
Because that was just like, this is what everyone is watching now. And now there's so many things. And like you said about us switching to TV now, if they're going to make a Narnia thing, they're going to make it a TV series. Well, that automatically reduces the amount of people who are going to be invested in it.
So,
or does it though? I don't know.
My question is, are you suggesting that that centralized throne of being the central unit of culture is switching from movies to something else, or that it's dissolving entirely?
I think it's a little bit of both. I still think there are TV shows that can capture cultural consciousness in a broad way, the way that movies used to. Like, I think, God, what was the chess movie from last year, or the chess TV show?
Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit.
Mhm.
I think that was a good example of something that really just caught fire.
There's a couple others. Tiger King.
Yeah, Tiger King is absolutely one of them. So I think that still exists. I think it is harder to do and will happen less often. But I think I would like, outside of maybe one or two Marvel movies within the next 5 years, I don't see it being movies at all. Like, I'm trying to think of which Marvel movie is going to be like a big cult. Like, obviously it was not Black Widow. I think Shang-Chi looks great. I don't think it's going to be that movie. I think the Eternals looks interesting. I don't think it's going to be that movie. Like, think about this. Think about Guardians of the Galaxy, right? Guardians of the Galaxy was a movie with a bunch of characters that nobody knew anything about, and yet it became this huge thing in culture. I don't think that could happen again right now. I just don't think it could happen. And I'd like Suicide Squad, James Gunn, same deal, like same kind of tone, like a movie that I really enjoyed. That movie tanked. It's not doing well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's yes, a lot of it is, as we said, pandemic related, but I don't know. I think we've fallen off the cliff a little bit with this stuff, and I don't know what the future looks like. And obviously, like, there's always going to be entertainment. I love TV. I'm a TV guy. I've always been a TV guy. Like, I will continue to enjoy TV and watch TV and talk about TV, but I also really like the movie as a thing. And I'm not saying movies are going to go away. They're not going to go away. We're not going to stop making movies, but I think they're going to just like become less and less important to people. Like, a good like, not great I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this. Our most popular episode of this year, Matt, of this show right here, is us talking about Bo Burnham's Inside, which, I mean, I guess you could call it a movie. It's not technically. I mean, it's a comedy special. Like, that is the type of thing that can enter into cultural consciousness and be memeified. I just don't see movies doing that anymore.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily think that this is a permanent thing, but I definitely don't think it's a short-lived thing, and the switch to streaming services is definitely going to confuse things. But I do think what's permanent is that every big mega blockbuster has been a little bit less impactful than the one before it. And there's just too much stuff now. Like, I'm just this conversation reminds me of how, like, every time I talk to my parents, my mom recommends like some new TV show, and I'm always like, yeah, okay, Mom, because like she's recommended like 25 TV shows to me over the last 5 years probably.
Right.
And I'm like, I don't have time to watch even one of those. And like, I think what's funny is it's not even that I don't trust her recommendations, because she was the one who kept telling me to watch Breaking Bad, and I finally watched Breaking Bad, and I was like, oh, Mom, this is the best thing ever. And she's like, yeah, that's what I was telling you, like, for literally years. And so like, I'm sure she's just full of all these good recommendations, but it's like, yeah, but I can't watch that. I can't watch that much TV. And so the point is, like, there's just so much stuff, and everybody's watching their own thing, and there's not this shared experience of consuming the same one thing.
Well, that's interesting, because that extends obviously not just toward those long and organized pieces of culture, but the splintering of internet subcultures, I think, has continued and splits down further and further. Y'all aren't on TikTok, right? No way, right?
I mean, I have it on my phone,
but you don't.
I don't do TikToks. No,
right. So I've avoided getting addicted, but like I think I experienced enough to comment on it, that the For You, like the algorithm that shows you what you like, is really, really, really strong, and that basically leads to extremely niche subcultures forming, extremely niche, where people talk about on that site about the other sides of TikTok, right? And there's endless sides of TikTok where you will never see the other one unless if you intentionally go out of your way to dive down into it. And so it just ends up where people see entirely different things constantly. And I don't know, there's something a little unsettling about that to me of anytime I experience or when I go into incognito mode, I see the advertisements that are just like generic and maybe are like for old people. It scares me that I haven't seen anything like that in years at this point. And it's an entire aspect of culture that I have no, not even knowledge of, right? Much less familiarity with.
I think this is a good point, and I think this is a more important point than me saying I'm sad because movies aren't relevant anymore. Like what it really is, this kind of really fascinating. I mean, there's always been bubbles, right? We've always lived in bubbles, but I think the bubbles have never been as good at isolating us from the other bubbles as they are right now.
I mean, just what Alex just said about just the ads. Like, Scott, you and I watched all the same commercials for our entire childhoods.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter what maybe you liked G.I. Joe and I liked Ninja Turtles, but we watched the same commercials. I guarantee you that. Like and isn't that like, that's just not true anymore. Like the commercials become tailored to who's viewing now and what the algorithm thinks they're going to buy. Right.
Yeah. That's fascinating. And that's like, I mean, I'm very glad that there's so much entertainment out there that everyone can watch their own thing and like have like there's going to be something out there for everyone at this point because there's so fucking much of everything. But yeah, that is a little alarming that like people are just totally experiencing a totally different part of the world from each other.
It's like it's another part of reality, basically. Your reality is constructed of what you see and what you experience, right? And so there's these entire aspects that you will never even relate to. But if you'll let me go on a monologue for a minute, I've been thinking a lot about picture the concept of the internet in an epic, as in an ancient oral traditional story passed down, right? It would be like, it's a magical object. It is something with aspects that are literal infinite, that you will never experience all of the content on there. When you go on to so many of these sites, you will scroll forever. It does not ever end. You can't scroll through it faster than the content is being produced, even if you are going down into a specific niche. And just any item of that kind of power and just unreality, like I don't think in any ancient story something like that would ever turn out well, you know? Like it would be a warning. It would be, don't accept the magical gifts that let you see literally anything you want to see or know literally anything you want to know at any given time, because all you will end up doing is searching up stupid facts about people or looking at porn. Like that's literally you know, there's something just picturing in a narrative is just the things that I assume from that. I don't know.
Welcome to the internet.
Exactly. Yeah, no, that's actually where it struck me.
It's a demon is what it is.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fast. I've always been the type of person that like wants to fill every spare second of my time with like watching something or reading something or playing something. Like I've always been that person, but and like that's a choice that I've made. But that's everybody now, and I think being bored is underrated. I think being bored is actually good for you because it makes you have to like think up ways to entertain yourself. And I think it's very easy to just never be bored now because like TikTok will never stop. Twitter will never stop. Those are infinite forms of entertainment or just something to do. Not even like, I don't even want to call it entertainment, but just like something to put in front of your eyes.
Yeah. No, I mean, Bo Burnham's Inside literally like is pushing me to delete Twitter specifically. For that reason, and I haven't done it yet because it has its tentacles in my brain. But I feel very much like I should. I feel much like the 10 years older version of me would be like, Matt, just do it. It's before it's too late.
I mean, I went on a walk the other day and I didn't bring my phone. And so like I wasn't constantly pumping something into my ears to listen to or think about. So I just like got to like think about like just whatever, just anything that popped up in my head. And I was like, this is pretty nice. Yeah. just thinking.
I don't know what this was like.
Yeah. And I don't know, it's wild to me. And this rant has gone off topic a little bit, but I think it's fine because I think it all wraps up into the same thing, which is this idea that like, that there's so much, as you said, Matt, there's so many things out there. Like, two people could do nothing but watch television for the rest of their life and never watch the same show.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. Yeah. That's insane, but it's true.
I want to return to what Alex just said about the fact that like this is a warning, because let's set aside the fact that I actually believe that like AI will just get stronger and stronger and be its own threat. And let's just abstractly talk about the fact that all of the combined might of all of the intelligence of all of the people and organizations that make entertainment is growing and becoming more refined and more accurate at knowing what you're going to like, knowing what you're going to click on, knowing what's going to attract your attention and hold your eyeballs. And they're just getting better and better at that every single year. And they're making more and more stuff with more and more like gradations of content to narrowly focus in on you specifically. And that's just going to get worse and worse and worse, like forever, I think.
Yep.
Until we literally have our own little like AI who just like tells us stories that are perfectly tailored to us. But maybe there is something to be said for taking this as a warning that like, if you let it have you, then it never stops. If you want to keep control over your own mind, you have to metaphorically burn out your eyes if this were an actual epic.
Is this something that can be avoided on an individual level though?
I think if you have good policies, like a policy I've thought of, not implemented, but thought of, is to never let myself do anything that has an algorithm telling me what to see. And that already wipes out Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. I think Netflix probably actually.
I mean, Netflix definitely does have an algorithm.
Yeah. I think that works for now, but
soon it's going to be everything though, is the thing.
Yeah. So. I don't think, even if you can avoid it, I don't think society can with that kind of individual.
Society can't. There's nothing you can do for society. I'm too old to think that I can fix society, but I can at least try to fix myself. Mm-hmm. And like you could even have a policy where it's like, if somebody tells you to go watch something on Netflix, and you can then you can go watch that thing on Netflix, but you shouldn't just load up the Netflix homepage and let Netflix tell you what to watch. Like that's the kind of that's where that policy might go.
I mean, I don't actually use YouTube's recommended algorithm. Like the YouTube videos I watch are my subscriptions page.
Well, how many subscriptions do you have?
I mean, quite a few, but
okay, so you're getting algorithmed out of that.
I guess, like, I don't know, like, I have 119. It says here, but I watch maybe a quarter of these actually. Mm-hmm. Like, maybe a quarter of these when I see a person uploads a new video, I'll actually watch it.
I kind of think that's fine actually. I do watch the YouTube home screen stuff. I let it take over my brain, and I recognize the harm of it. This conversation is really making me like want to stop though, because it's kind of embarrassing to say these things out loud.
No, I mean, I don't think so, because it's everyone. Yeah, it's everywhere. Like it's not like you're the only one. Your
parents and your children. So
yeah.
Dear,
it has us all.
Yeah, well, I just opened up my my homepage on YouTube, and there's There's a video about the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Exactly. Something really funny though is when the algorithm totally fails because it's factoring in something that is unusual for you. Like I get so many advertisements for exercise stuff now that is not working on me. Talking about getting ripped or whatever. I'm like, I just wanted to buy some weights. Like, relax.
Well, don't worry. They've heard you say that now, and they will stop.
Right. Yep.
I mean, either that or we'll just check in with you in a year and you'll be totally jacked and you'll have
so right.
Yeah.
Drinking muscle milk every day.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wild time to be alive. That's for sure. And in conclusion, I like movies, and I'm sad that the theaters are all going to die. I like, not to be overly dramatic about it, but I do think,
I don't think you can be over dramatic about this, to be honest, but go on.
I do think theatrical experiences are going to become a niche thing that is like as expensive as like going to see a play, or like,
well, going to see a play is not that expensive. Well, I guess the big ones. Never mind.
Hey, you're moving to New York now. It's real expensive there.
Okay. I forgot about that. All right.
But or like going to a concert or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like where I think that's where we're going, and like that's a price that I personally will happily pay because I think that experience has value for sure. But not everyone feels that way, and that's a little bit of a bummer.
I agree.
So Narnia, am I right?
Yeah. I mean, in this retrospect, that 2005 movie looks pretty amazing. Actually.
I would like to return to that time.
that was just a few people wanted to make a movie, and they made a movie.
Yeah.
It's good.
Well, I don't know if I expected this conversation to depress me as much as it did.
Sorry, we're in the depressing. I don't even want to go over things, but
there's a lot. It's
understandable.
There's a lot going on. I don't want to get into it. Ugh.
I hope y'all listening are enjoying this fun and lighthearted movie review podcast.
Well, we had fun with the Narnia stuff, and then we just this is the Aslan gets shaved and stabbed in the heart section.
Which one of us is the Christ-like figure then?
Well, I guess you'll have to tune in next week to find out.
I'm the kind of gargoyle creature that is like way too terrifying to be in this movie. You know what I'm talking about?
The like weird, the gross looking one, the like little one. It's like skinny.
Yeah, there's that one. Does that one have wings?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one where it's like, what movie is this one
gross noises from?
This is from the Hellraiser dimension or something. This does not belong here.
Next week on the podcast, Hellraiser. Actually, really like those movies.
I've never seen them, actually.
Well,
that is truly going to be all we have for you folks this week. If you have any opinions on, oh my God, I'm not even going to list all the things we talked about, but just those things, if you have opinions on them, we want to hear from you. You can reach out to us via email at doofmedia@gmail.com or over on our Twitter account @doofmedia. But don't go to the Twitter account because we've just decided that's bad. It's evil. Don't use it.
You can send me a personal email if you just want to send me a message that these boys can't get. It's alexandra@doofmedia.com. Thank you very much.
That's true.
Yeah.
Just in case. I don't know.
Yeah. And if you're not already subscribed to the Doofcast, we encourage you to do so because it is not actually algorithmically generated. It's just us making podcasts. And it's just a linear feed.
That's true.
See, this was all basically me manipulating you to think that podcasts are the only valid form of entertainment.
Well, but Matt, what if they found us via the YouTube algorithm that you've just said was bad?
Okay,
matter.
but does that happen though?
It doesn't matter.
That happen, Scott?
Well, it does for our Jackie Chan episode.
That's true. It's very true.
In any case, don't go to YouTube. Go to iTunes, go to Stitcher, go to Google Play, go to Overcast, go to Spotify.
I thought you were just
not Spotify.
Say, you can send me an email and I'll send you the MP3 file.
Yeah.
Send me a letter. We'll get a PO box. You can write us a letter, and we'll send you back a copy of an audio file.
I mean, send the like as a flash drive because that that comes out of the budget. So like,
oh yeah, you're right. Of course, you're right.
Anyway.
You can find this and all of our shows over at our non-algorithmically generated website, doofmedia.com. And you can support us on Patreon at patreon.com/doofmedia. There's a bunch of different levels and tiers for you to donate at. And this episode here only exists thanks to the generosity of our patron, Joey. Joey, I hope we did the movie you picked, Justice. It was a fun conversation that I hope you very much enjoyed, because I sure did.
Yeah. Also, please consider rating and reviewing the Doofcast on Apple Podcasts, because each review, God damn it, each review causes the Apple algorithm to prioritize our podcast in its rankings.
It's inescapable. We can't escape from it. Alexandra, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's always so fun to talk to you. And
thank you.
It's always, the episodes are always a little wild, but in all good ways.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I have weird wonderings. Two things real quick. Speaking of weird wonderings and weird internet stuff, there's something I don't think I told y'all about this. I made a short video with Ruben from Pale Reflections, exploring a very niche fan site for a character on the cartoon Total Drama Island. And it was really fun, and that should be coming out in the next couple of days.
What?
Yeah.
This is literally the first we're hearing about this.
Yeah, I did. It'll be on YouTube. It's a video. It's great. We recorded it like 2 weeks ago. I've also just haven't edited it, but it's there.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I can't wait to watch this thing I'm literally just learning about right now.
And for those who don't know, I do a podcast about writing. It's called Do the Right Thing. I like it. You should check it out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and I think that it always makes me happy when I see people say, like, this got me writing for the first time in a long time.
Yeah, it's nice. Also, Scott, you really have to come on the podcast. We've been talking about this for like 2 years.
Look, man, I'm not what you would call a writer.
Well, not yet. You're not.
So next week then.
Oh, I just get anxiety just thinking about that.
Oh, it'll be fine.
Scott can actually write. I have to call you out here because I've seen you write before, and you can write.
Not fiction.
I've seen you write
Then
fiction.
write nonfiction. The theme for the month is nonfiction.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No, don't give him an out.
You gotta start somewhere. Anyway.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Okay, so that's going to do it for us this week, folks. Matt, did we decide what we're doing next week? It's kind of, we're in between deconstructings right now, so it's kind of like the Wild West of the podcast. I think we decided we are going to do like an addendum episode of our Deconstructing Fincher series, where we're going to make Matt finally watch Mank.
That's right. That's what we decided.
I have no idea what that is. And Mank, that's a name.
It is a name.
It sounds great.
It is actually a name.
So Matt, obviously Alexander doesn't know what this movie's about at all. Do you have any idea, Matt, what this movie's about?
It's about a Hollywood screenwriter in the movies who was like blacklisted or something.
He wrote a little movie, you might have heard of it, called Citizen Kane.
Yeah, that sounds familiar.
Mm-hmm. What's that? I'm kidding.
So yeah, we're going to be talking about Mank next week. You can find that on Netflix. Don't use the algorithm. Just search for Mank on Netflix. It'll be right there. Yep. So hope you guys join us for that discussion of that movie. Thanks again, Alex. It was fun. Mm-hmm. And we'll see you all next week.
My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say. My name is Doof, and you'll do what I say.